Sprint 10. How to spot and create shared objectives. This sprint focuses on the shared objectives that are at the core of all relationships. It is important that you can identify and dissect any relationship into its separate shared objectives. We will go into more depth with plenty of examples to help you get more comfortable about identifying shared objectives. It's also important that you realize how powerful relationships are composed of combinations of cooperating, competing, and retreating shared objectives. This sprint dives deeper into shared objectives. We do this in the following article. We then challenge you with some questions about shared objectives you can identify and those you can anticipate creating with your startup teammates. To illustrate this, we will go into detail about the various shared objectives Derek had with his COO at iSuppli. How to spot and create shared objectives. Written and read by Derek Liedau.
Most people can tell that they are in a relationship, but most people have a difficult time describing the relationships they are in. Being able to spot and create shared objectives underpins the ability to knowingly form meaningful and powerful relationships. This ability is key to mastering the relationship building skill set. Spotting shared objectives. The challenge in describing relationships is that we tend to recognize only our most important relationships with friends, family, and coworkers. In reality, each of these relationships is a complex combination of relationships at different levels and of different types. As we tend to only think about the highest levels of shared objectives, the complex combinations that we actually have often obscure the adjustments we can make to shared objectives required to improve outcomes. Take friendships. At the highest level, friendships form because two individuals make one another feel happier. Among close friends, there are always a multitude of ways each friend makes the other feel better, and each reason is a different shared objective and a distinct relationship. The specific enjoyment of being with a person you call a friend could be caused by some combination of these and other examples of shared objectives and payoffs. So, using friendship as an example, at the highest level, the level of long-term mutual support, the shared objective is the friendship. And as an example of the payoff are both parties making one another happier. At another level, there's feelings, and the shared objectives could be, for example, of feeling fashionable. And the payoffs could be sharing new fashion tips. At another level, could be about tangible goals. The shared objective could be achieving a specific mutual goal. An example payoff might be higher grades from studying together. At another level, it may be about status. The shared objective could be specifically about higher social status. And the payoff example could be one friend's ability to create conversations with cool kids helps the other hang out with a group that they wouldn't otherwise be accepted by. The conversationalist friend's social status is also benefited by her quiet friend's loyalty. At another level, it could be about safety. The shared objective could be mutual protection from threats. And the payoff could be shared objectives used to better defend both against adversaries. Another level could be about intrinsic core motivations. And the shared objective might be mutual support of one another's value systems. And the payoffs could be recognition of one another's altruism. At another level, it could be about play. And the shared objective could be a friendly competition. And the payoff could be, for example, tennis skill enhancement. These examples of payoffs are phrased to imply that the friends agree on how the payoffs would be shared, even if the payoffs might be different for each. Tensions lead to having to adjust some shared objectives. Tensions arise if there is any shift in how either party feels about their payoff from having shifted. This could come from perceptions that the chances of achieving the shared objective may have changed. This would cause either or both parties in the relationship to ask, how much additional work or investment is required to reach the objective? Or what outcome will now be likely? Or how will the new expected payoffs be split? For example, tastes may change and cooking together may no longer be as pleasurable for one as for the other, leading one person to want to retreat from the activity and the other person retaliating by not being in a good mood. Or one friend could accept a job at another company that leads them to seek status with another group of coworkers, resulting in the other friend feeling lonely and sad. These tensions, due to shifting shared objectives, payoffs, and/or overall priorities, can only be identified and resolved by discussing the shared objectives and respective payoffs. These conversations can get convoluted, particularly when two people have lived or worked together for many years and may have shared objectives that they have not necessarily thought about or itemized. This leads to a commingling of payoffs in the minds of one or both of the parties. A shift away from cooperation in one shared objective can then induce the other party to retreat from or start competing on a totally different shared objective. Logic such as, you did this to me, so I'm justified in doing this back to you, is often used to justify unproductive, emotionally competitive behavior, preventing productive relationships from becoming unproductive. The key to preventing productive relationships from getting unproductive when a tension arises is to sit down and write out all the different shared objectives and expected payoffs. The shared objective of this exercise is for both parties to help one another create a map of what exists and what has changed. If tensions are too high for the two parties to feel good about helping the other be successful, then an experienced outside moderator is needed to facilitate the discussion. Powerful relationships require a mix of cooperation, competition, and retreat. To explain how you weave together cooperative, competitive, and retreating shared objectives with individuals that play a big role in helping you make your dreams come true, I will share a personal example. My success as an entrepreneur would not have been possible without a deep and productive relationship with my second in command. My chief operating officer, Lloyd, ran day-to-day operations at iSuppli and was somebody with whom I had a long-term, powerful, successful, and mutually supportive partnership based upon a spectrum of specific relationships. These shared objectives influence how we work to create a valuable global market intelligence company from scratch. Lloyd and I cooperated on an overriding shared objective to build the valuation of the company. I made sure I understood Lloyd's core motivations for joining iSuppli even before I extended an offer to work together. We talked frequently over lunch about how the success of iSuppli tied into fulfilling his dreams of being financially independent to the point that he could pay off his mortgage, pay for his two kids' college tuitions, and help their future families have homes, and still have enough left over for he and his wife live comfortably for at least 40 years. No small aspiration. It was sometimes a struggle to envision our shared objective having good enough payoffs when our business was under financial stress. The fact that I demonstrated how critical this objective was to me by doing whatever I could to do to meet it, including sometimes foregoing my salary so he could receive his, built enormous trust between us. We had many other shared objectives that were critical but subservient. We frequently competed on the shared objective of how value would be created in order to test the quality of our ideas. We would openly debate our points of view before our leadership team so we could listen to their analyses of whose value creating strategies were strongest, which we would then set off to do. I often retreated on shared objectives relating to how we set pay levels or commission structures. To make sure Lloyd felt autonomous and motivated, I needed to share these objectives, but retreat from making decisions that involved Lloyd's area of expertise. We competed on the shared objective of setting a reasonable compensation plan for Lloyd. We always had different opinions, and we always had to find ways of adjudicating between us, so we both felt the outcome was good for the company. We cooperated on the shared objective of creating a specific corporate culture. We both understood the importance of having a coherent culture at iSuppli, which meant that we had to have similar visions of the culture we were working to create. We always coordinated the important actions we took so everyone at iSuppli could see we acted consistently with our vision. Lloyd and I often competed on how to deal with specific employee issues and would set up tests to determine the best way to handle each issue for the company and the employee. We cooperated on shared social objectives, with each of us doing the social tasks with which we felt most comfortable. And Lloyd always did the golfing. We cooperated in keeping our board of directors informed, because we both understood the importance of effectively sharing information and emotions with this critical group. This is not a complete list, but it is representative of the shared objectives we felt were important. The list of distinct relationships that formed our general CEO to COO relationship grew in complexity as the company grew in size and scope. I was thoughtful, although not always successful, in creating specific new shared objectives with Lloyd. I wanted the competitions to be confined to areas where we did not agree, but were important to increasing the value of iSuppli. The competitions were structured to be tests for which of our proposed solutions would be best for the company. We competed frequently as we had very different perspectives on how to market our services and how much time and money we needed to invest in expanding our product offering. These disagreements always resulted in getting other people or groups to choose between our alternative visions. If I had simply mandated my solutions, then if anyone wasn't considered best for the company by either Lloyd or others with better perspectives than mine, that could call into question the trust we had that we were all working towards building the biggest valuation for the company. As you would expect of unbiased competitions, Lloyd would sometimes win when his desired outcome was objectively judged better than mine. Because the rules I set were judged as subjectively fair and objectively effective by all those affected, the results were well accepted. The company benefited from these competitive tests, and I learned through the judgment of others more expert than me. Ultimately, you want to construct your competitive relationships such that the competition filters out inferior outcomes, leaving the superior shared objective outcome as a benefit to others and as a learning experience for yourself. Setting up fair tests of ideas did not mean handing control to Lloyd or some committee of judges. I retained the full responsibility for the outcome of whichever solution we implemented. The evolution of our relationship was consciously implemented, but was not planned. It evolved as required by the exigencies of the moment. I kept close tabs on Lloyd's objectives and desired outcomes and made sure he knew where we were in making progress towards achieving our objectives and realizing the expected benefits. To have withheld information would have harmed the cooperative relationship. Sometimes the news was bad, which led Lloyd to question his commitment to achieving the shared objective. That's natural and to be expected, and it's not traitorous. Fortunately, he never did retreat. Changes or additions to specific shared objectives were always made on an as-required basis in a way consistent with improving the chances of achieving our most important shared objective. If at any time either of us had felt the other was no longer committed to doing everything possible to maximize the value of the company, the web of interrelated relationships would have begun to unravel, which in turn would have led to a crisis in our ability to work together. We had to survive many crises over the decade we worked together. 2 economic meltdowns of our tech market, the September 11 attacks, unforeseen rapid changes to our customer base, intense competition, and completely unreasonable requests from clients. Only a web of thoughtfully constructed, cooperative, competitive, and retreating relationships could have taken us through a dozen years of value creation. My partnership with Lloyd serves as a role model of relationship building. By using these methods of identifying shared objectives and forming relationships using the right category of cooperation, compete, or retreat, we created over $100 million of value.
Sprint exercise. Now that you've read or listened to our article, How to Spot and Create Shared Objectives, we challenge you with some questions about shared objectives you can identify and those you can anticipate creating with your startup teammates. To do so, write down the following. Write down, with the help of a friend, all the shared objectives and payoffs you can identify. There should be examples of cooperating, competing, and retreating shared objectives. See if you can identify one or more shared objectives that you can shift into a more productive type. How did you change the payoff to do so? Describe a time when you created a lasting relationship with someone that was a stranger. Have you ever helped 2 friends or colleagues make peace? What relationship building skills did you use?